Y'all aren't going to believe this, but these are gluten-free Chick-fil-A nuggets and a gluten-free Chick-fil-A sandwich. Fried, not the grilled kind that we can already get. And my Chick-fil-A eating son tells me they're better than Chick-fil-A's gluten-filled ones. So let's get into it and I'll show you just how easy it is to make these babies at home. So we're going to start by making a brine for the chicken, and this is just kosher salt going into a quart of cold water, and then I'm also going to add a little bit of sugar as well. And I'm just going to whisk these up until both the sugar and the salt are dissolved pretty well in the water. So while I'm doing that, I just have to say that this is the brainchild of Kenji Lopez Alt. I will leave a link below for his original recipe and video. He is a well-known chef who has a cookbook or 2 or 3. I don't know how many he has, but he goes by the science of things, and he does some recreations of some famous dishes. This is one of them, and I made it gluten-free, of course, by using my gluten-free all-purpose flour blend, and changed just a few tiny things about it, but not much. So this is basically his recipe that I have modified to be gluten-free. And it is the absolute best Chick-fil-A copycat recipe I have ever tried. And once I tried this one, I stopped trying to find a better one because there is no better one. I've tried them all. And of note, the pickle juice is just a myth, supposedly. So at least that's what he said, and several other people said, and it is not in the list of ingredients. If you were to look at the ingredients of a Chick-fil-A, the fried chicken on the chicken sandwich or the nuggets, none of them list anything like pickle juice, vinegar, or anything of that nature. So I'm going by that and Kenji Lopez. And I've got a bunch of nuggets, and I'm also putting 1 chicken breast that I've cut in half horizontally, and I'm going to brine that in there too so that I can make a chicken sandwich as well. So we get this in there, stir it around a little bit, and then we'll cover this and let it sit in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour, but Kenji describes that really 6 hours is the perfect time for getting the juiciest chicken with what would normally be a dry chicken breast. So I go for the 6 hours. I do this in the morning if I want chicken nuggets for dinner. Okay, fast forward 6 hours. My chicken is ready to come out of the brine. So I've got a baking sheet with a couple layers of paper towels on it. And I'm just going to remove all of the chicken and place it on the paper towels. And I'm going to pat it really, really well until the chicken is nice and dry. So just take some more paper towels and press really well to get them as dry as possible. Okay, now I'm just going to remove this bottom sheet of paper towels so my chicken can just sit right on the baking sheet, and it is super, super dry, which is exactly the way I want it. Now we'll make the spice mixture, and this is just paprika, a good dose of black pepper, cayenne, just a little bit of cayenne, and MSG. Do not be alarmed about the MSG. I link an article down below and on my blog about exactly how MSG got a really bad rap for no reason whatsoever. But if you're still on the fence about MSG, you can totally leave it out. You might have a little bit of a different flavor to it, but it'll still be a wonderful thing. Which, by the way, Chick-fil-A uses MSG in their fried food. Okay, we'll set that aside while we get the wet ingredients together, and that is just milk and eggs. There is no buttermilk in this, and of course, like I said before, there's no pickle juice. So I know people are going to come at me. They came at me before when I first introduced this recipe on my blog, and I just want to drive home that message that there is definitely no pickle juice in the original Chick-fil-A recipe. So now that we've got that cleared up completely, just mix these two together until the eggs are well broken up. And then I just put them in a pie dish. I mean, any kind of shallow bowl or what have you will work just great. So pie dish is always it for me because they are like a shallow bowl. So I've got my pie dish, pour it in there. One of the eggs didn't break up, so I'm going to break that up real quick. And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, for the dry breading part, we're using gluten-free all-purpose flour blend. I'm using my own blend, the recipe for which is always linked in the description box. You can probably use a store-bought blend just fine. And that was dry milk powder, a little bit of dry milk powder, a little bit of sugar, salt, and baking powder. And then I'm just taking some of the spice mixture and I'm putting it in the flour mixture. Not all of it though, because we're going to save the rest of the spice mixture for the actual chicken. So whisk this together until it's fully combined. So to get the craggy bits on the outside of the chicken, I'm sure you've seen this method before. It's just putting a little bit of the wet ingredients into the flour blend, and it kind of creates little bits that will adhere to the chicken, and you just get those like little, what I call crunchies. And they're so good. So just a couple of tablespoons is all you need, and then I mix it up with a fork until it's like kind of the texture of wet sand. Okay, before we get to dipping, we need to use up the rest of that spice blend, and we just sprinkle that over all of our chicken. And then I like to just go in with my hands because I'm going to be using my hands anyway, and just kind of rub it all over all of the chicken. Okay, that's perfect. So we'll go ahead and dip it in the wet mixture. And I like to start with the nuggets first. And I put about half the nuggets in at a time. It'll depend on how much chicken you do, because you can do like large batches of this chicken. I've done it before. I've frozen it. It is such a great thing to have in the freezer. So now we put them in the dry mixture. And just like remove some of the excess, let it drip off. But it's okay if some of that gets in there because that just creates more of those little craggy bits. And then once it's in the dry mixture, you just toss it about. Now for the nuggets, what I like to do, I'm using the fork to toss it about, but you can't really press and adhere those little craggy bits to every little piece of nugget. I mean, I guess you could, but it'd take an awful long time. So I grab my spider at this point and just like kind of shake the excess flour off of them. And then I put them right back on the baking sheet where I coat everything. And when I'm done with the nuggets, then I go to the full fillet for the sandwiches. And what I like to do for this one, I really do want to pack it on there nice and firmly. And when it's at the end, when you do this last, it gets a lot of nice bits on it because there's already extra from dipping the nuggets. So just press it really well to adhere. And you can see it right here, those little craggy bits. So now we can go on to frying. I like to use peanut oil because that's what Chick-fil-A uses. You can also use vegetable oil, canola oil, any neutral oil will work fine. And I actually heat this up to 330. I know that's a little lower than the norm, but I find if I do 350, it tends to get pretty dark on the outside before they're completely done on the inside. So I grab my spider and just lower a good amount in there. Again, I'm probably going to fry about half of these at a time. And it might reduce the temperature slightly, so you may need to adjust your heat to compensate for that. And kind of break them up, make sure they're not all sticking together. I'm going to speed this up. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes for the nuggets. And when they're ready, they will be golden brown, just like this. They are so unbelievable, you guys. My son is, I call him a Chick-fil-A aficionado because he absolutely loves Chick-fil-A. Like, it's his favorite place. And he tells me, no lie, that these are better than the Chick-fil-A gluten-filled chicken nuggets. Way better. So every time I make them, there is not one nugget left. But speaking of that, I want to show you how you can make these ahead of time and freeze them. I breaded these a few hours ago, put them on a parchment lined baking sheet, and put the whole baking sheet in the freezer and froze them until solid. Now I'm putting them in a zip top bag. You can also use an airtight container or whatever. And I'm just putting the nuggets and the filet together. You can also, separate them out if you want. You can freeze these for like 3 months, maybe even 4 months, and just break them out when you're ready to fry. And fry like usual, maybe add a minute or two to the frying time, and that is it. But you guys, there is still more. I knew somebody was going to ask me this question, so I went ahead and tried it myself, and it works fabulously. I have my air fryer set to 400 degrees, preheated. I'm putting a layer of chicken nuggets in there, and now I'm going to spray them with cooking oil spray. You can even use olive oil spray if you'd rather. Put them in there for 8 minutes, but halfway through, at the 4-minute mark, I'm going to take them out, flip them over, spray them again, 4 more minutes, they are done. They are so good, you guys. So if you don't want to break out the oil and you just want to do something quick and simple, this method is perfect. Y'all, I know Chick-fil-A has grilled chicken, but that's not what they're famous for. This is just like their fried chicken, maybe even better. To make the sandwich, fry up the filet and slap it on one of my gluten-free hamburger buns, along with some mayonnaise and dill pickles. Add some frozen waffle fries on the side, and you've got yourself a Chick-fil-A meal for way cheaper. Enjoy!